Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Recently, it rained in Northern California after nearly a year of no rain. So, on the day it rained, the solar generation was so low that my power barely even charged halfway the next day. So that was a first for me. Previously, even on cloudy days, it would still fully charge the Powerwall. So that got me thinking, how does Stormwatch work? It says in the app that it detects significant weather events that may cause a grid outage, and so if it does that, it's supposed to charge from the grid because presumably there wouldn't be enough sunlight the next day to charge it up, and you wouldn't you'd be off grid. And so, but ultimately, we have no control over how it determines that. So it got me thinking about an improvement that, on rainy days, it could prioritize the charging from the Powerwall from solar as an added measure of security, right? And for most people, I'm guessing that they don't have the Powerwall sitting in backup mode all the time, and they're probably using either self-powered mode or time use to save money, right? And so what in this new energy mode feature that I thought of is really to make use of the weather forecast, which is widely available. And previously I'd used this open weather API really just simply to get temperature readings to precondition the car, but it has quite a bit more features and API endpoints. So I used the current weather one, and I started looking at this one called the One Call, which gave me daily forecast and hourly one. So I think it's free to sign up, which is great, and it's a freemium model, so some APIs you have to pay for, some don't, but there's quite a number of them. And so the current weather is actually too accurate, right? It gives you a point in time measurement of what the weather is at that time, and whereas the One Call for the 7 day or 48, I think it gives you a more comprehensive set of weather data, and it doesn't change from minute to minute. And so if you look at the code, this was the current one I used, right? And so this endpoint just gives you the weather measurement at that time. And then the daily one, I'm grabbing the daily forecast, which is today plus the next 7 days, and then a 48-hour one. Now I'll tell you in a bit sort of how I use the two together. And you can see here from the syntax, you can look on the website, I can exclude currently, the alerts, and the minute by minute, right? And then I didn't bother, I probably could just call one, but I just left this one to save on refactoring, so just left that alone. And then if you look at the main sort of logic here, right? It's supposed to check today's weather and then set whether it's backup mode or self-power mode, depending on that. And as a reminder, right, backup only mode, it prioritizes charging the power with solar during the day, and then it only discharges if there's an outage. So if there's no outage, it will not discharge. It'll keep it at 100%. Whereas self-power mode, a little more complicated, it will prioritize not using grid power, which means the solar will first go to power the house, and if there's anything left over, it will go to charge the Powerwall second, and if there's anything left even more on top of that, over that, it'll export to the grid third. And then so in self-powered mode, when the solar production ends, it will discharge from the battery up to your set threshold, because remember, it's trying to not use grid power, right? Whereas the backup mode, the threshold is set to basically 100%, and so it will never discharge unless there's an outage, right? So that's how the modes work. And then so, in here in the code, right? You can see here I get the daily weather, right? Now I originally tried to use the daily forecast, but then it would say, let's say the forecast said for tomorrow it's rain, but it's not specific enough. Like in some days it actually didn't rain a lot, and there was enough solar to fully charge the Powerwall, even though the forecast said rain. So then I looked at the hourly forecast, which obviously is more granular. And I look at the ratio of number of rain hours to non-rain hours between sunrise and sunset, obviously, for between sunrise and sunset, that's when solar generation occurs, right? So here's an example, right? This is not the actual output of the API, but it's a similar concept, right? So this is cut off a little bit, but between the hours of the sunrise and sunset, which is when solar would be produced, you could see here that actually in this example, there actually aren't a lot of days, hours of rain. It's cloudy, so you could theoretically get enough solar production. And you know, the rain may be because of the evening time, which doesn't matter anyway because there's no solar. So if you look in here, that's how I thought about using the hourly forecast, which seems much more useful. And then, you know, so then that's what I'm doing here. I get the daily weather from that previous API call that gives me both 7-day forecast plus a 48 hour. So from the 7-day, I'm getting the sunrise and sunset time. So that's what I'm doing with that piece of data. Then I will loop through the hourly forecast to find the correct day, and then also to look between the sunrise and sunset hours. And then I count the number of instances, the hours where there will be rain versus the total number of hours in the between the sunrise sunset time. So that will give me you know, this ratio, and I set it to 50%. Why 50%? Because I have no idea, right? So I just set that as a midpoint, and then I can adjust it up or down. But theoretically, you know, if in a 12-hour period, 7 of those hours are rain, then I'm going to say, hey, let's not take a chance there. Let's go to backup mode. But if it's less than that, you know, we'll put self-powered, and hopefully there'll be enough sunlight to charge the next day. If not, I'll obviously change the threshold. Now, you may wonder, you know, why the next day? Why look at the next day time delta plus, you know, the delta 1? Why not current day? Well, the way I thought about it is because use my my dashboard here. So this is the solar production, you know, for the past 30 days or so. So if you recall, this is total per day. So if you recall, the Powerwall has a capacity of 13.5 kilowatts. So all these days had theoretically enough power to fill it up, except for this one day, right? So it's below 10. It's like 8, you know, 9 kilowatt hours. So it didn't have enough that day. That's the day that I realized this. And so if I look at why I look at the next day is because if you sort of rewind back, go back in time, the day before, the Powerwall is 100% or it's charging, has enough power to do that. But then in the evening time, if I had known the next day it would be so much rain, I would choose to not discharge it the evening prior. And because again, the next day, if I did that, I wouldn't have had enough solar to fill it back up. So that's why I look at the next day's weather, right? And then so presumably then if the next day there was enough, then I can let it discharge more because I could fill it back up the following day. So that's why I chose to look at the next day's weather versus the current day. Now, obviously, I could, you know, it's binary, right? So, you know, I went from backup mode. I could maybe, you know, I could get more fancy depending on the ratio. I can set a different threshold. I can say, okay, maybe I'll discharge only a little bit versus, you know, 100% backup mode. So I think that's an improvement we can do later. But right now, I think it's just to prove out this concept. I think that's how I think about, you know, what weather data do I look at, and how do I determine, you know, what's too much rain or not enough rain for, you know, as it affects solar. And so then I run this, you know, this script, this Python script. I run it on a cron tab at 5 a.m. and essentially it'll look again at next day's forecast. And if there's too much rain, it'll be in backup mode. Otherwise, it'll go back to my normal setting of self-powered, you know, at the current threshold. Now, you know, as I said earlier, is rain, you know, the best indicator of solar production? I don't know. I don't really have that many data points. It's probably not. And, you know, I noticed here that this is a new API on this open weather site. There's a solar radiation API, which actually says it judges the solar performance. So actually that will be better. I haven't played around with that, so I might do that later. But for now, I'm going to use the rain one. And so, you know, in closing, right, I think, you know, with this automation, I can increase the energy security I have by having more solar energy stored in case there's a rainy day and it causes a grid outage. And, you know, it'll leave me with a low state of charge and, you know, have to try to survive on that until the next day, which is probably, you know, filled with anxiety. So I'll give you an example too. In Northern California, there were some days where there was light rain and it actually caused PG&E power outage. And they explained it because there was so much dirt accumulated on the power lines from having no rain that the little bit of rain caused it to turn from dirt to mud, and that's what caused the outage. And then they said, they explained that if it had rained normally, a moderate amount, it would have just washed it away and not caused all these outages. So, that's not something I think Tesla would have caught as a significant weather event. So, I think having sort of more of these finer grain controls and being able to more intelligently determine how your system behaves, I think is a cool thing. Now, of course, you could do this in your mobile app manually, but where's the fun in that, right? So anyway, that's it for now. Feel free to leave me a comment if you have any questions. If you found this video useful, feel free to like, subscribe, and use my referral code that I linked in the description. Have a good day.